Okay, cheers for joining us today, Brian.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, we're both really looking forward to this, and I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from you today.
Well, don't set the bar that high or that early, man. Like, what if you already know all the stuff I know? Then we're stuck.
Yeah. So we'll get started. We'll get straight into it. So in 2014, you made the headlines for wiretapping the Secret Service and FBI.
Yeah, that's where this starts.
So, can you just walk us through like the events that led up to this and what your intentions were?
Yeah, that good choice of words. I was trying to bring light to a scam that kind of exists all over the world right now. It has for a long time. It's been going on longer than the internet, to be honest. People would find ways to game we had yellow pages and white pages, big telephone books. Japan has them. I'm assuming the UK has them. You guys just have them on the other side. And everything is alphabetically listed. I'm glad you got the joke, by the way. That's the subtlety doesn't really work over here.
Yeah.
Everything's listed alphabetically for plumbers, solicitors, doesn't matter what it is. And locksmiths, solicitors, and anything that's really high cost with low barrier for entry in terms of cost of materials. So locksmiths basically are only charging for their time and their expertise, and it's like 5 pence to just knock out and replace some piece of metal. So now with Google Maps and everything else, people have found ways to place their business in 10, 20, 30 locations, or people developing lead generation will put businesses all over the map for a region, for a country, all over the world, so that they're getting more calls because more numbers. I mean, everyone understands scaling. So if you have multiple locations for Tesco, you're going to get more customers. Well, it doesn't work with restaurants or businesses that require a building. But if you have no requirements for that, you'd never go to like a contractor's office. You'd never see a pool cleaner's office, a landscaper's office. Maybe you guys don't have pools, but we don't have them much up in Seattle either. But people in Florida, like every single person has a pool, so you need a pool cleaner. So people found out how to take advantage of that and drive business to them or sell that phone call to somebody sort of in real time and charge them 10, 20, 50, $100 per call. And it's a very, very lucrative, very shady business practice because you're stealing business from people who would have been in the top 10 and now selling it back to them as if you were some knight in shining armor. It still happens all over the world. People make tons and tons of money. And I wanted to bring some attention to it. And I may have chosen some immature ways of highlighting it by making some inappropriate, what I know now to be inappropriate childlike humor, which I still find funny. Listings on the map, like Edward Snowden's secret hiding place was on the White House lawn. I changed the Russian embassy in London to a gay bar. I'm not allowed in Russia, and I'm almost certain of that. And then a North Korean concentration camp became an amusement park with a South Park joke. And Mormon Church, Church of Scientology, and nobody was exempt. It all became like comedy clubs and whatever else. I think the Westboro Baptist Church. Do you guys know about those crazy people?
Yeah.
Picketing funerals of soldiers and saying gay people were responsible for the weather. Like that's a pretty big leap. And so they became an adult toy store for a bit, which still find funny. I'm not gonna lie. But I got news coverage for the very first time. It was on the news for not like a car chase or anything. And we demonstrated it live. Like I showed the reporter how this all works. And I made the Library of Congress, the Zoolander School of Kids Who Can't Read Good. on Google Maps. You could like you'd be searching for the White House or anything in DC, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what? And it's a picture of Derek Zoolander. And they thought it was funny, and they weren't wrong. Google didn't really enjoy that. And then I was telling them, I said, well, this is just fun and games, but what about if I were to create a daycare and put it in the top 10 in a few minutes? It bypassing all of the ranking algorithms that you guys have. What if it's now in the top 5 for a major city like Manchester or Birmingham, and got a picture of a teddy bear, and I hire someone on Craigslist to go be the daycare person, and you don't meet me, and I wire money or Zelle money or whatever the transfer mechanism is. And then like halfway through the day, 10, 20 kids registered, I replace that person. Say, hey, go home. Here's a full day's pay. I'm going to finish out the day. And then parents come to pick their children up, and the house is empty. And it's no longer on the map. What do? Like, where would you go? You'd look on Google and be like, it's not there anymore. That's even worse than the Mandela effect. You guys are talking to the guy about like stuff changing. Like, this is legitimately a problem. So, in a moment of sort of annoyance at maybe 1 or 2 employees in the Maps circle of Google were just sort of dismissive about the whole thing. They're like, you can't do this. And they're on the phone while we're doing this. Just being sort of, we're us and you're you. So you just keep doing that and stop making noise. So I wiretapped the Secret Service and the FBI without permission, which on its face is a poor idea. Turns out, yeah, it's a really bad idea. Smartest and dumbest thing I've ever done, which required me having to go into the Secret Service office the next day and say the dumbest words anyone has ever had to say out loud. Really, like, hi, my name is Bryan. I'm a computer security, I'd say expert, but right now I'm not feeling so expert. I might have wiretapped some phone calls people made to the Secret Service and the FBI, and their initial look was like, oh, nice, okay. Like, they don't have much of a deviation in personality. They're all very sort of by the book business because they protect the president. They investigate currency, treasury stuff. They're not big, ha-ha, funny jokesters. And I tested that a number of times, intentionally or otherwise. So I'm standing in a room about maybe 5 meters by 5 meters, a little lobby, and a couple chairs, and there's 3 agents all in suits, and I'm standing there, and I've told them the whole story, 15, 20 minutes. And they're like, all right, well, we'll get a hold of you. We know how to reach you. You're not looking at anything I'm wanting to show you. You're not, oh, you think I'm crazy. Yeah, I mean, they're not wrong, but just wrong about what? And okay, so tell you what, guys, I can prove this to you. Call the DC office of the Secret Service, and I'll show you. And if I can't, I'll leave right now. So the guy pulls his phone out and taps on it a couple times. Yeah, and so he's now talking to somebody. It sounds like he knows him. Like they've had prior interactions. They know of each other. They know each other by first name only. And he said, I'm investigating something, just checking the phones. I want to see my phone works. Hangs up, and now I get a notification on my phone that said, you've got a new marketing quality assurance call for campaign Secret Service. Would you like to listen to it? Oh, yes, I would. And so I push play and push speaker. And now you hear ringing, and then you hear the guy on the other end, Secret Service. And then you hear the guy we all heard. And so the 2 agents and I who didn't hear this other guy are now hearing the whole conversation. And they're putting it together that I wasn't lying. And then they took all my stuff. And I got a form that said, do you understand your Miranda rights? Which is, you have a right to an attorney. You have the right to remain silent. None of them are good, really. Like, I feel like it's a big bummer from top to bottom. But yeah, then they invited me into the guest suite, which magically has no windows and is just a very tiny room with a table that's bolted to the wall. and a couple of chairs, and we sat there for 4 hours, and I demonstrated over and over and over again how this process works to multiple people, because they're checking to make sure that I'm not lying and that the story stays consistently the same. And yeah, so that, and then they found that there was no criminal intent. I didn't try to sell it to the Chinese or the Russians or some mafia group in a movie. It was trying to solve a problem, and Google wasn't listening, and I chose a very poor way of going about it, but it wasn't malicious or trying to be treasonous or anything. It was just stupid.
So how difficult or easy was it to wiretap the Secret Service?
Oh, it wasn't technically the most brilliant hacking. It's using systems that were already sort of in place, or misusing systems, rather than typing in a whole bunch of code in the middle of the night with a secret name and like a matrix sort of perspective. It was definitely, no one's done it before. No one thought to do it, but the mechanisms all existed because people are doing this legitimately. You buy a 1-800 number or a toll-free number of some kind, and that forwards to another phone number at a call center. And that call center has 50 phones. Every single person in most of those call centers don't have a direct line. They're in a phone system that transfers calls automatically. So you have to have a 1-800 number that gets to one local number that feeds to everyone else. That's how most phone systems work. And that's kind of how this worked, except for it was one phone number to me. And then instead of listening to the direct call of people calling the Secret Service, because putting them on Google Maps meant that's where everyone could get that information. Same with the Secret Service. He typed in something like Secret Service, Washington, D.C., and Google Maps popped up the top result. So he clicked the top result because you trust Google implicitly. It's become a verb. It's like saying tissue versus Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand. Tissue is the generic for Velcro. Same thing. These companies are trying to fight that because they don't want their trademark name to become the word associated with it. And so they lose certain protections. But we trust Google with everything, and we search Google for everything. And if it's on Google, like, oh, good. That means it's true.
Yeah, we trust Google over other things. If someone was to tell us something, we would use Google to check if they're telling the truth, and we would sort of weigh up whether or not they're telling the truth, depending on what Google's telling us.
Right. It is maddening sometimes. I've had people try to correct me on this process. I've written the only book on the subject. It's not good, but it's the only one. So it's the best and worst book on the subject. Go write one, and then you can talk. But like, people, yeah, we all look at Google and it's like, oh, that's it. But on the app, it doesn't even show the phone number. It just gives you a call button. Why? Space issues. Because the UI is too big if it does it that way. So you can't even really check, oh, this phone number doesn't even really fit the city or state I'm trying to call. It's on the other side of the country. So it was that type of stuff that was highlighted. But eventually Google fixed a bunch of the things that they've been doing good work in terms of getting rid of spam and other problems. This just didn't fit their definition, and no one saw the potential for what it could do. I was told I was not allowed to wiretap any more federal agencies. That much was obvious. But I did demonstrate this for a couple of congressmen and a senator, showing them why it's important that they claim their offices in whatever cities they're in, because someone could impersonate them. In the same way that people can collect unemployment benefits here in the United States, if somebody hasn't filed for it, they can go and file if they know enough information about you. And then all of a sudden, if you find yourself out of work, you're not going to get money back because it's already been paid out to somebody else and you didn't know. So that kind of thing. It's knowing what property on the internet is about you is there, and being able to take a sort of an inventory of it. Because if someone pretends to be you, what kind of damage can they do? I mean, they can pretend to be, you on OnlyFans, but if someone gets a video, it's going to be very different. If someone pretends to be you to the government, what can they do? Go to a car dealership? Can they get a loan? How much damage can they cause? So knowing what's out there about yourself is important.
So when because this was back in 2014, what was it? The fact that I guess technology was moving at too fast of a rate for, I suppose, the government to keep up with. And
when wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's still like that today because of all of this AI stuff. I don't know how much you know on AI, but all of this seems to be far outstretched, and the government aren't keeping up with it at all.
We even before AI or any other vowel, we weren't keeping up with things at all. I mean, we're still in the Stone Age on certain things. Cybercrime and computer crime, the FBI investigates, but only after a certain threshold, because if you lose 1,500 pounds, no one cares. It's, oh, well, you got scammed. That sucks. But they're not kicking down doors for anything less than like $1 million or maybe more. And it's happening even at that scale all the time. So then we make a new product and we don't know what's wrong with it until someone finds out what's wrong with it the hard way. And that's why we have researchers. And it's important to find people with the interest and skill set to like try to be an ethical hacker, a programmer, or somebody who does reverse engineering. And there's a million different paths you can choose. But a lot of kids, especially teenagers, myself included, get that little rebellious twitch and, just want to set the whole world on fire, or at least a little corner of it. And don't want to be ethical about things. They just want to do whatever's cool. And it's not sort of ethics driven or morality driven or values driven. It's just sort of what's exciting. So yeah, there's we've always been behind. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. And we always will be then, because we can't keep up with it. It's going too fast.
People were trying to fight wars by standing in a line in front of each other until 100 years ago. And then someone did something different. Like, hey, you guys can't do that. We're all supposed to line up like idiots. Right? No, we're not going to do that. And then when they got used to that, people were like, they're hiding in trees. We can't see them. That's not fair. Like, yeah, but it's kind of their country. So.
So when you was in the Marines, were you part of the cyber team in the Marines, or?
No, I was a linguist. I got into cybersecurity, I guess the official sort of switchover. I was an engineer, like a voice over IP engineer, server engineer for Microsoft products up until the 2014, 2013 timeframe. And then started getting more and more. I got a little attention from that whole wiretapping thing, as you would imagine, and gave a TED talk about it. That was basically my first time doing public speaking and figuring out, oh, this isn't that bad. Like, I don't know why people hate this so much. It wasn't great, but it was, I didn't feel nervous. It wasn't scary. And it's led to a public speaking career and being able to try to help people with either in person, seminars, webinars, whatever. Any sort of tidbit that could pass along to make sense to somebody that might help them avoid being taken advantage of. That's the goal, being useful in whatever way possible. It doesn't just have to be on the biggest platforms ever. It can be on a very small podcast, because you never know. Small podcasts get big guests, and then all of a sudden they're huge, and people are going back and watching all the other videos. Like Hot Ones, that guy asks brilliant questions and now has the most amazing celebrities on. He wouldn't have predicted he got there. He's eating hot wings with people and crying because they're so hot every single day, and people are losing their minds. Some like touch their eyes and like, everything that can go wrong goes wrong. No one would think it was a success, and he's one of the best interviewers I've ever seen.
Yeah. So what was that kind of like a wake-up call when you obviously got interviewed by the Secret Service for you to then think, shit, I need to be an ethical hacker. I can't go down the rebellious route too far? Or did you already sort of have that ethical sort of mindset?
No, there there was definitely, it wasn't like one moment or anything, and there was definitely moments earlier in life, like in my 20s, I wasn't the hero of my own story, if you want to call it that. I had been on and off drugs, and I finally got clean and sober in 2013, and then promptly basically got divorced, diagnosed with ADHD, and then wiretapped 2 federal agencies, as you do, all within about a year. So it was a busy year. Yeah, woof. But looking back, like, yeah, I wouldn't have cared about the ethics of it at 22 or 23 if it was interesting, or like, I just didn't give a crap. I just didn't. And hoping to be able to relate to kids who might face that dilemma and be able to, like, hey, like, you don't have to take my advice. You really don't. You might find it interesting. It might, if I can tell it in a way that doesn't make me sound like I'm condescending or talking down to somebody or trying to sound too smart. I've never been accused of trying to sound too smart, but I want to avoid it just in case. Kids might pick up on honesty and vulnerability rather than pandering and condescension.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good outlook, actually. Because it does seem like we're in a time now where a lot of people are condescending, and once someone hits a certain level of knowledge, you see it a lot in podcasts that I watch anyway. They get these guests on that, yeah, they know something quite well, but they struggle to even for a second try and listen to another side of sort of a certain agenda that they're speaking on. And so many people are stuck with this tunnel vision.
Well, you get to the top of your field. This is a known phenomenon. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's Nobel Prize winners who win a Nobel Prize suddenly think they're Nobel Prize winners in other subjects based on the amount of arrogance and sort of like, well, I know I'm a Nobel Prize winner. But like, no, you're a dick. Like, you know a lot about economics. You're not a medicine. You know nothing of medicine. Stop acting like you know it all. But that's ego. And liking the result of getting, you win $1 million, I think it's €1.5 million for a Nobel Prize now. And people will pick at it and be like, well, the guy invented dynamite. No, the guy invented dynamite and then took that money and decided he didn't want to build weapons. And so he'd come up with something that turned it into something good, driving people for a peace prize. That's like Paul from the Bible, who's literally killing Christians, becoming a guy who's a Christian. He's like, ah, crap. Like the amount of irony in that guy's life. He had to change his name and change his profession. He's hiding from people who are trying to kill him for what he just did yesterday. That's a big, big switch. I don't think anybody has a switch quite like that. Like, even if it was not true, that story is pretty incredible. So being able to demonstrate that you can have fun and there are tons of cool challenges ethically, hopefully it might resonate. But kids know BS, period. Cynical, they hear everything, they're faster on the uptake, their brains are working correctly still.
So from sort of like your average consumer point of view, what would you say the big threats are at the moment? And I'm asking this because of websites like, do you get Temu over there in the US?
Yeah, I know the brand.
Yeah, because these
Sheen
are
and
Sheen and all of them.
Isn't Temu like Wish.com but worse?
Well, apparently so. Apparently, yeah, it's just some Chinese factory that are just recreating designer products and selling them for pennies, basically.
And then at some point they like add lead or asbestos. Like, it's just like deliberately bad stuff. You're like, what is this? Yeah, no, my daughter's ordered like a t-shirt. H&M is a great store. I don't want to diss the brand, but if you want the t-shirt to last, don't buy it there. And that's still higher quality than most of these other sort of knockoff sites where you're buying like tissue paper. You're like, wow, this is fashionable, but you can't wear it more than once. I didn't realize clothes came in disposable. But that's what you're getting. You get really, really cheap products that aren't designed to last very long.
Yeah, it's just fast fashion, right? You just wear it a couple of times and then throw it away.
Single serving. And that's right back to Fight Club. It's a very poignant look at like how things are built and designed, and like people need now. They want interesting stuff, new stuff, better stuff, sexier stuff.
They just want stuff. Like they just need to
Yeah.
buy stuff.
Yeah. And they want it now.
Yeah, because usually, I mean, we wouldn't have 12-step meetings for like 20 different things if people were good at handling their feelings and not outsourcing how they feel to buying or shopping or gambling or all the other fun stuff. I mean, bad stuff.
So what do you think the threats are from using these sort of Chinese websites are from a cyber perspective?
Obvious one would be breaches or security compromises. So let's say the site is completely on the up and up and they're great. They're not selling your information to an illegal government or whatever. They can still get hacked. Every website is basically a collection of information that they've accumulated over time. Credit card numbers, identity information, passwords, and usernames. Cam, you use British Telecom for your internet?
BT, yeah.
Yeah, Cameron Carey at btinternet.uk or whatever.
No, I use Gmail for my.
You have a rocket mail address too?
I do from the past, yeah.
Yeah. Does the password used to start with a capital letter C?
I don't know. I need to know.
I'll text it to you.
Yeah, right.
Look how much he's freaking out. See, this is the problem. We don't know what's out there about ourselves. A company will get breached and then they didn't do a good job of hiding your data or encrypting it when it's at rest, when it's sitting there on a hard drive, it should be encrypted in a form that can't be decrypted easily. So every single person's password is supposed to be what's called salted and hashed, meaning it's a different way of producing the result of a encoded password that can't be reproduced easily. That's a really secure way of doing it. And it's just a little bit of math. It's a bit of effort. Not everyone does it, and they're getting burned, which is why a bunch of information is available about everybody. You just happen to be the first person I did because you were on the email and it said you send me an email. So lesson learned. But yeah, like there's that stuff. And then people can catalog and learn a lot about you just based on passwords. And I can search by password so I can find if you've ever reused it and find other addresses or find other username matches at other domains, then try that at other places. So if I'm a criminal and I know you have a Gmail or a Hotmail or a Rocket Mail, I try it at Dropbox, Temu, Shein, wherever. And now if you use the same password for everything and you don't have 2FA on, all your stuff is mine. That's it. If you don't have 2FA on, your stuff is someone else's stuff.
Yeah, because a lot of companies have started forcing 2FA on everyone, but not every single company website.
No, Facebook doesn't yet because I think a big part of their user base won't know how to use it. If 2FA turns on, setting up an authenticator app is a little much for a generation of people who've given up on new technology learning. Like if saving to a PDF is a challenge for you, that don't attempt the 2FA, call your grandkids, give them your stuff, turn in your driver's license. No, I'll be there very soon. I promise. It's not an ageist thing. It's just you've given up. We know.
Yeah. LinkedIn has 2FA now, and I did come across something. I've not looked into it properly, but you found something on LinkedIn, or you did something to LinkedIn?
Oh yeah. So right after the wiretapping the Secret Service thing, I was like, well, if I found this and like I'm just me, maybe there's other stuff. And I ended up using LinkedIn a lot because people were asking for interviews or just wanting to talk, and that's how you find jobs. So I found a bug. They fixed it, luckily. But there are people on LinkedIn who are famous, like Steve Wozniak, founder of Apple, Mark Cuban. And you can't just send them a message. You have to know what their email address is. Or if you can find a bypass, which is kind of what I did. I noticed that if you wanted to send a message to somebody, it opened up a URL that had this long string of uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. It was like 36 digits or 48 digits. And that didn't exist anywhere else on the site. Like you couldn't, if you opened a link to Mark Cuban by clicking on the photo, it was something different. But that, if you sent him a message, it was this really, I think it's called a token, but a very particular length and string size. But I found it in a different place where there were, hey, maybe you've seen this person, or maybe you know this person based on your search. They'd recommend on the sidebar a list of people, and then it showed up there. So I just plugged in, I sent a message to a friend, so it allows me to open up the message prompt, and then changed it to a different user ID with that string of numbers. And then I could send messages to anybody. So I sent messages to like Steve Wozniak, the founders of LinkedIn. They did not reply. Steve Wozniak did, ended up talking, and yeah, it's been, my sister was named Lisa after the Mac Lisa. Like my dad's always been an Apple fan. So that was kind of a cool moment. And realizing like the world is bigger and yet smaller at the same time than you think it is. And you can do way more just as a one person with the belief that it's possible. The reason ethical hackers, I think, win so much more often than we'd like is they know what's possible, and they're not going to get defeated by something so quickly. When us at work, we're stopping at 5 or 6 o'clock. We've got kids, we've got lives, hobbies, drinks aren't going to finish themselves. So they're moving with a different motivation and goal that doesn't get defeated as quickly. I knew that some of the stuff with Google was possible, so I kept doing it until it worked. And that's the difference between somebody who might just give up a few minutes later and go, well, it probably wasn't worth it anyways. I mean, I definitely don't think wiretapping is the right choice for anybody, but you do you.
You've also said on your website, you said you used to advise John McAfee.
Yeah, not anymore though.
Yeah. So I just wondered, what's he like as a person?
Oh man. If he liked you, and like in that, maybe in the early part of a friendship when someone's still like, it's that sort of golden honeymoon period or whatever, he treated me well all the time. He flew me to Vegas once for a product launch of a company that he had bought. Narcissistic tendencies, nice to his family and friends. I know his biographer, and he did a documentary and that ended up on Netflix, and he was in it quite a bit, named Alex Foster. Brilliant writer. And yeah, there's some dark stuff in John's past, as people may or may not know. It seems that the story is incredible enough that his dad didn't commit suicide, John killed him. And his neighbor, John was like 10, because his father was like very, very physically abusive. And the neighbor helped John cover it up and say, your dad killed himself. Like he walked him through it because he knew what was going on. Wow. I mean, as the neighbor, like, yeah, like we all protect the kid, right? Not knowing what that can do to a kid, not knowing what the upbringing up until that point could cause. That's how narcissism and those things, I think, is one of the sort of pathways to it. I don't know exactly what, I'm not an expert in that subject. I've read a few books, but it seems to make sense. MPD, BPD, those are like protective psychological conditions designed to protect something that's very scared, self-conscious, low self-esteem, by outwardly seeming not that way, in very big layman's terms. They're usually kind of dicks to people, selfish, and in that same grouping as like psychopaths. So fun. But John was interesting, very like so smart it was obnoxious. I mean, he invented antivirus essentially. What if I didn't do that? I made some jokes on a map. Yeah, like hard to compare it.
Yeah. So what kind of work did you do with John?
I was on his advisory board for his last company, and worked with A lot of the people who ran his presidential campaign, he ran for the Libertarian Party, which is always funny because like you can have a criticism of one president or the other here, and someone will say, "Oh, you're a Hillary or you're a Trump supporter." Be like, I worked for a Libertarian candidate for president. That's the other thing. Like it's not just one or the other. Like you can't. But people don't care about logic and facts when it's mudslinging time. So it's just always funny over here.
Yeah, yeah.
Send help.
Yeah, well, I just watched that debate with Trump and Biden.
I purposely haven't watched it because like I'm already up to my threshold of like okay.
Yeah, I kind of like dipped
Let's
out.
wait till they're older. Let's just let them get a bit older.
They look like they're kind of at the threshold right now. Probably need to wait.
Yeah, they've been at the threshold. They've moved in. It's way past time. The average age of what is like 39 years old. The average senator and congressman's in their 60s. They're 80s. Like they're 3 years apart. The argument of like he's old, but he's not. That's so dumb because like 4 years ago, that was the same argument. He's older than he was when you were arguing about the other guy. Knock it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not better than or worse than Brexit. It's just we're both dumb and we need help.
Yeah. But it's from what you were saying, it almost feels like the US is just stuck between two really, really weird choices.
Yeah. Yeah, like watching your Labor Party do things that are anti-labor. Like, you guys need to change your name or pick a side, man.
We've got a similar problem. We're stuck between two parties that are very similar to each other, and
yeah, like I think there's a duality in a lot of things. Like people love the monarchs, but the monarchy and like the whole concept is so outdated and ancient. How is that going to end? It didn't. Like, let's not look at France. That didn't end well.
Yeah, it just seems like the monarchy seems like something that they're just going to try and just keep propped up and keep pushing it along.
It's something nice if you look at it in that way. Like people like it. I like it. I mean, we lost Meghan Markle, but oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was great in Suits.
It's well, I guess we're in this. Yeah, like Aaron said, we're in a very similar position to you guys. Anyway,
we're in a boat. We've dropped the oars, and now we're arguing about who dropped the oars, and then we're listening to you guys yelling about the same thing in a different boat. And no one's getting anywhere. We're all hungry. Yeah, it's about right.
yeah, it's it's becoming a bit of a show now, isn't it? More than anything.
Anything can be made into a show. That seems to be the rule.
Yeah, and entertainment, and everyone's hungry for entertainment as well.
Because other people's problems are interesting and funny, and it's a way to get out of your own whatever. We don't look at our own problems objectively, anyways. It's hard. I can tell you what's wrong with your relationship in a second, but my own, I'm gonna F that up. I'm gonna get over invested. I'm gonna hug it till it's dead.
Yeah. Well, that's why a lot of therapists sort of come out of their jobs, right? Is because they have enough of telling other people what to do when they can't fix things in their own lives. So they sort of give up with what the.
I mean, there's a lot of. I have a therapist that I see regularly and have for years, and she doesn't tell me what to do, but she doesn't not answer questions either. Like it's more of like, what the right answer is. I think. Let's talk through it. And having just the exercise of someone listening to you while you talk without judgment is way more effective and valuable than people realize. There is a stoic, there is definitely the stiff upper lip British thing of like, you hold it in and eventually you'll die. And then you never have to talk about it. And because talking about it would mean embarrassing the family and be like, how? Like, because I just told you. It doesn't, it's archaic. It it's kind of pervasive all over the world. And some cultures won't talk about mental health. They won't talk about going to see therapists. It's extreme in some places, and other ones it's not. And like, if you wear a pink shirt in America, you're gay. But if you wear a pink shirt in Japan, you're fashionable. And if you ride public transit in Japan, it's amazing and you're everyone else. But if you ride public transit here, you're poor and you're gay. Apparently, gay is just sort of synonymous with everything. And this is all from like high school, middle school sort of bullying of just don't do anything to make you stand out and have people call you names or get your man card pulled. So that's why all of our pickup trucks are getting ridiculously big. They're gigantic. It's so silly. It's like looking like a giant refrigerator is driving down the street. It doesn't make any damn sense. But America, we love it.
Yeah. Yeah, the trucks. I did want to ask you about the education system because obviously I haven't been in the education system for a few years now, but there's nothing that really teaches at all about cyber security or
No.
any.
We don't teach kids how to manage their own money. And then we expect them to get out of school and go pay taxes and file taxes here. But we don't teach them how to do it. And then if you do it wrong, you go to jail.
Yeah.
Who built this? I mean, it's like a prank show, but nobody's behind the camera planning it anymore. It's just sort of going. Yeah, the education system doesn't touch cyber, and it's happening so fast and things are moving so quickly. Kids are outpacing their parents the second they get a smartphone. And there's moments where my daughter's like, dude, just tap on the YouTube video on the right and it'll fast forward 10 seconds. And this is probably like 2 weeks after that feature came out. So I'm not exactly behind the curve, but she's already like, my old man, check this guy out. Like, I will end you. But I got the kid I deserved. We can't keep up. Laws can't keep up. Kids aren't interested in what they're not interested in, and making them interested is just impossible. I think there's a comedian, Louis C.K. talks about, he's not canceled in the UK anymore, is he? Good. He was canceled for a little while everywhere, and then he came back and everything's cool. But he had a bit about this where he's like, you need to teach kids math. Okay, which kids? The ones who just live near the school. All right, so they want to learn math? No. They don't want to learn math. You have to teach them math against their will. You have to make them know math or maths. Okay, that sounds horrible. And so I get paid well for this? No. You get paid the least amount ever of anyone. And there'll be no gratitude whatsoever. And like 50 years ago, the parents were on your side. Now they're not. Now their kid's an angel and you're an idiot and they're coming for your job. Gotta love that get up and feel good moment, you know?
So with the education being so far behind and the government being so far behind, what would you say is the answer to teaching the younger generation? Because they're the ones that are picking up, like you said, they're picking up all the tools way before anyone else, and they're diving straight into it without even a second thought of any repercussions. So what would you say is the answer to teaching them security? If it's not going to be in the schools, that is.
I would say companies are going to have to find, it's whose responsibility is it really? I think companies will take a part in making ethical hacking, cybersecurity sexy, interesting, compelling, more TV shows, more media, maybe a reality TV show, maybe a collection of things that try to influence kids positively or give them something to go, and because no one knows what all the jobs are. We know what a hacker is, sort of, is a dork with a keyboard. It's like, pick a guy who looks like he doesn't know how to talk to the opposite sex. There you go. And then now I'm 41. It's you just sit in a dark room long enough. Like my skin's really like I have to put on black clothes because otherwise it just whites everything out. It's awful.
I think you've obviously seen it at Mr. Robot. I think that depicted.
Yeah, some friends of mine were the advisors on the show. It's brilliant. It's
Oh,
really,
right.
really well done.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing, and they stereotyped the hacker sort of down to a T. With he was a bit of a
Well,
whistle.
yeah, stereotyped and also forced as like sort of like a writing device or a plot device to create somebody who fit the profile of somebody who would be doing the thing that was required to advance the story, right? Like he couldn't have been a fireman. It wouldn't have worked. He needed to be a certain particular, like avoiding people, smarter than everybody, certain kind of attitude. Like you have to fit an FBI profile to some stereotypical degree to be able to pull off this stuff. Intelligent, distant, like introverted, that kind of thing.
How accurate was some of the things he did? Like
They were textbook accurate. Like that's the point. Like they weren't like two people typing on a keyboard simultaneously to double the amount of defense against a hacker that was in a TV show here. It's like, wow. Check, please. That's just the worst thing I've ever seen. But mainframe, don't say it. No one said it in a long time. We don't have those anymore. But hacking the mainframe, I think, has become the joke that writers will just throw in because it's so cliche now. Because no one knows really what to say. But there's frameworks that describe different types of hacks, like whether it's you asked what the big common ones are. Social engineering, tricking people, anything like that is social engineering. Getting you to do something that I want you to do against your will. If you knew what I was trying to do, you wouldn't do it. But how am I going to get your money if I don't lie to you? I really need your money because I've got things I need to buy and I don't want to work. So give me. So that's not going to work. Honesty isn't going to work in this situation. So there's phishing attacks, sending a PDF that has an embedded something that's this type serial number, this. And if it changes a little bit, it's this. And then the next step is another thing. So like, did you break into the bank by drilling through the floor, drilling through the wall, teleportation? Are you magic? Did you work at the bank? Do you know someone at the bank? Like all those variations get cataloged and tagged based on real attacks and how hackers are actually acting and mapped into how to defend against it, what security controls to put in place. Oh, okay. So all of the burglars are under 5 feet tall. Let's just put all the pin pads at 7 feet above the ground. Problem solved. We'll just discriminate against height and then they can't get it. Or like we'll put all of the gold inside of a giant jar and they can't get their hands in because their hands are too fat because they've been eating too much or something. Just whatever ridiculous thing to sort of highlight it. Security controls are designed to prevent something specific. You don't just put a car alarm on your cookie jar. What's that going to do? It's just going to annoy the crap out of you. No one's coming to your house to, all right, are you stealing those cookies? No, but we'll probably say something if you're stealing a car. Maybe. Depends on where you live.
Yeah. I saw maybe about a month ago, like you obviously will get it in the US as well, but we'll get here a lot. Say if we've ordered something online and Royal Mail are going to deliver it, we'll get a text message off a fake Royal Mail saying this. But I saw like this advancement in it where it could be someone, say we do a podcast, right? So our voice is all over the internet. Someone could use AI to use our voice to then do a phone call to our mother or sister or brother, say, I need some cash, I'm stuck, and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to send you a text now with a link. Just send the cash over to that number. I'm seeing like all of these.
This is why podcasts are really good. Is it whether you're big or small, you're reaching pockets of people. If I did 100 podcasts with all these small people, you're not reaching the same people. So blanket coverage of everybody means you have to do a lot of small ones and big ones. Like if you could go on American Idol or The View or whatever these big shows are, great, but no one's listening for long periods of time. That's not long form content. It's like watching Twitter live. You get about a minute maybe for a topic, and then you're moving on to the next thing. People don't want to sit and think about something. But this way, people can find out about those types of stories. One of the people who's represents me for speaking engagements, who books me for conferences to travel, like big gigs, she had someone call her with her daughter's voice screaming in the background. Mom, they've kidnapped me, and then put her in a trunk. And that girl wasn't in danger. She had just been to a trip to Mexico. And this is a very stereotypical type of scam, but it got advanced with the AI voice stuff, because up until that point, they just had to bluff. Hello, senor, we have your kid, and he's whatever, and like, okay, well, no, you don't. We're like, yeah, no, we've got him. He was peeing on a bar after hours, and we caught him urinating in public, and the federales are going to get him in 30 minutes if you don't pay us like $1,000 right now. Well, like Western Union, if you call the cops, it will take too long, and we won't be able to secure his release with this bribe. And people pay it. Grandma thinks kid's in trouble and wants to do the right thing, doesn't realize he's home playing Xbox. And it is safer to do accents on British TV or podcast than it is on American ones. So I'm taking full advantage of it.
For now, anyway.
Yes, for now. Welcome to the party.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns with the advancements in AI and how they're going to be utilized for hacking and cybercrime?
There's a company called LifeLock here in the US. They do identity protection type stuff. I'm in their latest commercial that's going all over the US doing an AI demo with the host. I called his wife from the computer that's sitting in front of us, and then my voice turns into his voice real time on the phone. So she hears him and is mad at him for forgetting the last four of her social security number, government identification number, because he needed it for a form. So not only did she, tell somebody else her social, he got in trouble for it. It's the best.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was a fun demo. We haven't even seen this, like a scratch on the surface of the amount of creativity criminals are going to utilize this technology for. We are lucky in some degree that we don't see more of it, because there aren't enough bad hackers. There's way more victims to be had, and people who haven't followed basic stuff with cybersecurity. Passwords that are too short. Like if you have a password that's like password 1, password 2, password 3, password 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are some of the most common ones ever. And those are the first ones people guess. And they get it right, and then it's it.
So what would you recommend to sort of our audience and us, like the best way to manage passwords?
Oh, have one for your voicemail for sure. Didn't that happen over there? Wasn't there some whole voicemail scandal with some news organization?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Piers
that's.
Morgan.
Yeah, it sounds like something that guy would do. He kind of sucks. I mean, I don't know. He's British, and I'm not, and I don't fully know, but he kind of looks like it. Doesn't he?
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Like, you don't feel bad for him. Like, he had an easy childhood. Like, you for sure know, like, he never missed a meal, and maybe his horse got sick. Something.
It almost seems like he's had that his whole life, though, because he always seems to be landing the biggest and best interviews before anyone else right now.
I don't know. The rule of thumb seems to be middle-aged white men bail up. I mean, it's not going to be like that forever, but it seems to be like it's been for a while, and it is definitely not. It's not how I would have picked it. But I grew up in Japan.
Oh, really?
My whole life was
All right.
living in Tokyo. I grew up being like I had a colleague who's a childhood friend who's black, and we were both the same. We were both not Japanese. That's it. Like, oh, we're Japanese. Okay, this is the normal sort of standard in the hierarchy, and you guys are not that. Okay, cool. Like, right, it was a totally different thing, but there's no white privilege over there. But there's definitely privileges for being a foreigner because you can get away with dumber stuff before people expect stuff of you. Like, so yeah, it's different everywhere.
I lived in China for a year when I was at uni. Yeah, so the exact same thing there. Like, you try as just a foreigner, you're not Chinese, but you get away with a lot more stuff because you're seen as a stupid foreigner.
People will treat you like you're 40 or 50 IQ points lower than normal. Like, oh, he's trying so hard. Let's just go. Oh, come on. But yeah, if you try, people will bend over backwards to help, especially in a foreign country. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Sorry, you were talking about passwords then, and then we kind of went on.
Passwords should be 14 characters or longer. Easier to remember than longer than like complicated. It doesn't have to be super complicated if it's over 14 or 15 characters. Use a phrase, like come up with something that's not going to predict your next one. So like if you have April 23 exclamation point, like it's not long enough, but it probably means you'll have May. Just a guess.
Yeah. I mean, a company I used to work for, whenever someone new joined the company, their password would be the month and the year that they joined.
Yeah, it's things like that where there are plenty of websites that'll sign up for something and they're going, oh, you can't pick a password longer than 14 characters. And be like, well, we're all gonna die. This is a very small, benign example of why we're all gonna die. Because someone's gonna configure something like that where you get stuck in a loop. Like you have to have 14 characters, but this says I can't. And this one says you have to have symbols, but there are no symbols on this keyboard because they wanted a special keyboard. Like it's dumb stuff like that. Like an unsinkable ship that has holes in the unsinkable part. I mean, it didn't even make it once. But we fixed all those problems now. We're all smart now.
Yeah. What about, so I see these videos come up quite a lot where it's, do you know, like these hackers from, I don't know, like Bangladesh or wherever, somewhere not Western anyway.
Probably more India, but
yeah, it probably is India.
India and Pakistan.
And what they're doing is they're obviously bringing people and doing these scam. I don't know if we'll consider them hackers. They're more like scam artists over the phone or whatever. But then you'll get the guy on the other end who's hacked into their CCTV, hacked into their computer, knows their name, knows everything, and he's repeating all of that over the phone. Have you seen these?
Oh yeah, they're brilliantly funny and entertaining. They're also the documentation of committing a crime.
Who's committing? What is the hacker there committing the crime? No, the scammer. So is that hacker considered an ethical hacker for doing what he's doing there?
He'd go to jail if he got caught.
Really?
Even it doesn't matter what your intent is in terms of once you've sort of associate yourself with being an ethical hacker, you have a set of rules that you should understand more so than the general public. So I wasn't an expert in wiretapping. I got a freebie, I guess. But now I know enough that they wouldn't give me the same pass. So if you're an ethical hacker, you're not allowed to break into systems you don't own or have permission. It is a crime. Doing it on it, like British Telecom has terms in their contract that you're not allowed to do stuff that's unauthorized or illegal, like torrenting, shareware, sharing files, movies, copyrighted material. There's all sorts of stuff like that that protects the companies that are providing these services. You're not allowed to just do whatever you want. I mean, you can, but it's a choice. And the consequences might be very, very minute in terms of the likelihood of getting enforced, but he's documenting committing a federal crime here in the United States. And I know that the Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada, United States all sort of have this information sharing. A lot of all of our laws are based on the same similar legal structures. So I'm guessing you can't just hack anybody you want, even if it's funny or for views. But, you know, clout's pretty important.
So what, as an ethical hacker, what's the sort of what's like the day-to-day sort of stuff that
Oh
you
God, it's boring. It's so boring compared to what you see on TV. That's why it's hard to film. Lots and lots of copying and pasting, documenting stuff. Think of it like being a private investigator and you're taking photos and you're like following and stakeouts, and it looks sexy, but they cut out the 8 hours where you're standing in front of somewhere getting soaked in the rain or sitting in a car dealing with, I can't even see, gotta go pee, but if I go pee, they might come out. Like, it's just all hassles. No one wants to do it. At least with ethical hacking, you're mainly inside. And it becomes an addiction of some sort because you like going down the rabbit hole of investigations. Have you ever watched the people do a Google Maps identification, like geo guessers, I guess? It's like, that sand looks very red. I'm thinking that's Southwest Africa. What did you just say? What insane? And he gets it within like a quarter of a mile, and he's like, oh well, I tend to do the same thing to a little degree. Like, I can tell you what the Middle East curbs look like in certain countries because the black and the yellow and the white and the black are different lengths depending on which country you're in, where you're supposed to park versus not. We don't have that here in the US. So that's something I noticed when I was in the Middle East and UAE and Kuwait and Iraq, and like certain countries have different, like it's newer in Dubai than it is in Baghdad, for example. Things are a little bit tidier, and you can tell based on photos, like, oh, okay, this might be, that garbage can looks a little new, and okay, well, maybe it's here. So I like the logic, but man, those guys are good. And it sort of applies. There's just a million different things you can notice and learn, really.
I think I watched one just the other day where someone gave him such a hard one. It was in, not even, I wouldn't even call it a forest. It was just shrubbery around him, and he located it based on which plants can grow next to the other plants in that area.
Right, that's literally Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You must bring me a shrubbery. I swear to God. And that's like a huge buildup for like the worst joke, but they give him nothing and he comes up, oh, well, this plant's temperate. So what?
Yeah,
How
he
do
was
you
like
know
basing
that?
it on where the sun is and the clouds, and I don't even know.
Well, yeah, I mean, the east and the west, and like, okay, well, this time of day, and then the plants are looking towards, like, how much Nat Geo did you watch? Turn it off. Go talk to somebody.
On like a bit of a broader scale, how safe or unsafe do you think we are from global threats such as China, Russia, primarily?
To be fair, China's perspective, we're the global threats. The biggest, most capable economies are hacking each other or trying to all the time. I don't know that I agree with the idea that China wants to destroy the United States. They wouldn't own all the debt they own if they wanted to make, if they don't want to get paid back, sure. Like, if you lend someone money and then you kill him, you're not probably going to get repaid. It's very low, the chances. So it seems silly. And they don't seem to be irrational or silly. There's animosity for sure between Russia and the United States, Cold War. There's countries that just flat out don't agree on anything and probably never will. But yeah, everyone's hacking each other. It's part of it's not a declaration of war. So it kind of goes on, and I think it'll evolve over time to being more understood. Like, okay, this is not acceptable. They'll still do it, but there's definitely a rule in place that says you can't do it unless you really want to. And it's not going away anytime soon. espionage. Like Huawei isn't allowed to be used by U.S. government anymore. And I know the UK and because of security concerns, and like TikTok's the biggest thing. Well, even if they're not sharing email addresses and login information, I'm told that TikTok in China is different, and there's like a time limit kids can use it. But they give us the most addicting, sugar-riddled dopamine rush enslaving tool, and we're just like, gimme more of it, please. And it's even in my field, like you have to go create video content in a certain, like a certain way to be able to be compelling, and changes every 2 seconds, and like, holy cow, that's a whole other field I got to learn. But they don't allow their kids to get as addicted to it, and I think that's the biggest FU. Like, I think it's really funny because we're missing the big picture in terms of legislation, and like what they're worried about the wrong things.
Right, yeah. Well, there's people who I know that they finish work, and usually if you finish work, you might, I don't know, go out for a bit, you might watch TV, you might do something else. Some people, their evening is going on TikTok until it's time to go to sleep.
Is that any better or worse than sitting at the pub until you can't see? I mean, I'm a recovering alcoholic. It's not worse. It's not better.
Well, it's just a different form of escapism.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've never gotten on TikTok and then like gotten behind a wheel of a car and then crashed into a building. It didn't do that. Like, I never punched a horse or like a cop, but it does rob you of time. People watch adult video to substitute personal, intimate relationships with an opposite sex, same sex, whatever you prefer. People play video games. I mean, they're fun, but you could be advancing your career even just a little bit. 30 or 45 minutes of professional reading, and you'd be amazed at what progress you can make in a year and make the money you want to make and get the girl that you think you couldn't get without it. Drive the car that you think is going to make you happy. Spoiler alert, it won't. Or no, spoiler alert, it has a spoiler. Depending on how old you are. It's all distractions designed to like placate. So it's looking for something external to fill something internally. Flat out.
Yeah. Which all don't. The problem is, I don't know if it's something I'm obviously still trying to work out. I don't know if it's a school system, if it's just the way everything's set up that makes you think education is boring, learning stuff is boring, you don't want to learn, you want to go and do the other fun stuff, which is filling your head with crap.
Not everyone should be a teacher. Not everyone should be a parent. And good teachers are really hard to find, but when they're engaging and they make it fun and they can keep kids' attention, holy cow, that's valuable. Changes lives, hundreds of lives over a lifetime, just the butterfly effect. I'm so disorganized and I'm terrible at everything. One thing I do have an inkling that I'm better at is keeping people's attention over Zoom rather than being too boring or trying to sound too smart or trying to be too clinical and professional. Like, everyone's doing that. That's already done. I don't need to fill that. I would be a drop in the bucket. I just did a webinar for a bunch of essentially chief executives in technology or information, and they're all in companies we've all heard of. And one of my first comments was like, oh yeah, you guys would be passing on my resume right now if you weren't in here learning from me. And a bunch of them laughed, and like they stayed on through mental health talk and cybersecurity advice and trying to make it interesting. Like, ransomware is primarily developed by people in Russia or in Russian controlled territories. It's just the way it is. I have nothing against Russian people. I mean, most of the girls I date are Russian. It's a type. I don't know why. It just happens. I wish I could change it, but it is what it is.
Is it true that North Korea make a lot of their money through
Yeah,
ransomware.
yeah, ransomware and hacking. Yeah, but the ransomware game, I guess you could say, has people developing it in company site type structures because somebody hacked into the Evil or Revel or something, and they had Slack channels and payroll and HR, and they were just like another boring company. It's really hysterical. Now, then they license that software or partner with other. Think of like a bank heist movie. You've got a driver, you've got the hot chick, you've got the nerd, now it's the computer hacker, you've got the sexy guy who gets the girl, and he's Jason Statham. Why always Jason Statham? And that's the movie. Or Mark Wahlberg over here. It is what it is. And everyone has their little niche, and they need it to be a nice siloed, stereotypical thing. And like 20, 30 years ago, they added the geek, and then they added the brown person, and then they added the woman, because they're like, we're going to get crucified if these are all white people. And yeah, probably should. Making it uncomfortable for the rest of us. Stop. The idea is that translates into ransomware, but the people writing it are writing it so that if you infect a computer that's in Russia, it doesn't work. Otherwise, their police will come after you. And they don't want that because they live in the country where the police are. So they're avoiding that. So if you have Russian installed on your machine as a language, a keyboard language, secondary or whatever, it might not install if you get exposed to a ransomware attack. There are a measurable and notable amount of strains of ransomware that follow that logic. I'm not saying all of them still do, because this is a fact that people have uncovered. However, I don't see them abandoning it that easily, because it's a good protection mechanism for them to not get arrested. But Russian government isn't going to care if some kids write ransomware and it screws up stuff for their biggest enemy. Like, oh yeah, we'll get right on that. And yeah, they're not getting on that.
How much in the USA do companies pay out in ransomware?
A lot, billions and billions a year. I know that like Garmin, the navigation company, they got ransomware attacks so bad, like all of their web servers, all of their internal, external website, everything was gone down. And the only option for them was to use a middleman to pay the ransom, because there was some new law that came into effect that was basically equating paying ransom with terrorism. Like, you're funding terrorism if you pay the ransom. That was done with drugs here too. So if you buy weed, you're funding terrorists. And they had all these commercials, and it's just the most stupid thing you've ever seen. Like, you're smoking the green, and then you're funding these terrorists and 9/11. It's like, can you just make a propaganda like suppository instead? This is getting ridiculous.
Have you watched that movie Leave the World Behind?
I believe so.
I think it was on Netflix. It was one that was created.
It came out last Christmas, right? Last December.
Oh God, yeah, that was so much potential. Like, I get why they did it the way they did it, but like, oh my God, really? Like, the interesting movie is right there at the end, and then like you made an asteroid movie, but the asteroid never hit. What? There's the payoff wasn't there. What? And why were all the deer being weird? There's no good explanation for it. They're not on the internet. It's not like I got the Tesla bit. I got it. The deer, what is going on with the deer?
That's so true.
It's like they had a different movie and they forgot to cut a scene out or something. They like had a different plot going, and they're like, all right, this is just going to be a terrorist attack. No, aliens. Okay. Well, which bit are we? And then they just didn't do something and they left it in. It doesn't make any sense. You know what also doesn't make any sense? They didn't feel the airplane crash.
Oh yeah.
You would feel that for miles.
Yeah, that impact would be insane.
No, but the real problem is, I don't know if he lives here and making the housewife sort of racist overtly and like just making that tension just last way too long. There's so many ways you can prove you own the house and that there's it's just bonkers.
Yeah, well, I think some of it needed that Hollywood sort of funding, so they had to include a few bits
It
of
was produced by
Barack
the
Obama.
Obamas, wasn't it?
I know they probably weren't the only people responsible for it, but that is an interesting coincidence. Producers: Julia Roberts, Sam Esmail, Barack Obama. That's the movie you wanted to start with, really? 8 years, amazing president, and then that. All right.
With that movie in mind and sort of that terrorist attack on that cyber terrorist attack, how likely, not likely, but how real is that sort of threat, or how real is something like that happening?
Die Hard, the series had one with Justin Long, fairly
I thought.
recently. They maybe 4, 5, 6 something. Leave Die Hard, keep dying, or Die Hard, some dumb slogan. But it was a fire sale in terms of taking control of infrastructure, and doing lots of terror-related activities, scaring the population, turning core services off, total control, airplanes, planes, trains, automobiles, the whole gambit. That from a different perspective, this is like state actor doesn't want to control all the people, is totally fine with just letting them kill all of themselves or turning the world into Stone Age and like so there's different motivations for people. Some people don't want money. Some people want, like the Joker in the Batman movies, wanted to just watch the world burn. That's an interesting, you can't defeat somebody who doesn't have anything to lose. Like you can't, how are you going to stop it? I mean, really, you can kill almost anybody if you're willing to sacrifice your own body in the process. That's not a fun fact, but I mean, it kind of fits. Except for the Pope, he's got that little glass box, or it's the hat size, something.
Did you see that Heath Ledger's diary just got released? The diary he kept whilst he was
Just as long as he doesn't get a place in Amsterdam. I did not know about Heath Ledger's diary. It should be Heath Ledger's ledger, really. Like that was a super big missed opportunity. Come on. No one said, like, yeah, no one, nothing. Why would we even want to know what's in it?
Did you not hear about like him because he committed suicide because he got too involved in the role of the Joker leading up to the movie?
That's what he said.
That's what happened to him. He locked himself in a hotel room and was the Joker.
He OD'd on, I believe, prescription narcotics, but
yeah, after the movie, yeah.
Oh yeah, I can kind of get. You're if you subscribe to a number of pretty famous psychologists and people who talk about this kind of thing, you can't tell the difference. Your own body and your own consciousness can't tell the difference between self-deprecating humor and speaking negatively about yourself. To some degree, it takes in everything that it hears, and mental stress can turn into physical reactions. So if you get really stressed out emotionally, your physical health will suffer. My dad was stressed out at work in the 90s. He ended up having to quit his job and change careers drastically so he wasn't traveling all the time. And health problems cleared up like almost overnight that were chronic, that last for years. Like breakout in hives and just exhausted, so many different things. And then all of a sudden, boom, cleared up. Okay, so there's plenty of documented evidence about that. So mental state and secrets, things that we keep inside, tend to make our health worse and life worse, but we don't know who to tell, which is why therapists are good, because they don't know us. We feel like that's safer, or we have good friends, but I feel like guys don't know, or there's just not the infrastructure as it's built for women. Just stereotypical, not trying to get into a gender debate about anything. But the idea being women can talk about stuff and it's okay, but guys can't. We just can't. There's so many videos on TikTok going, who do you call when your life's going bad? And then the stitch is like, no one cares. I'm a 20-year-old dude. No one cares. And that's heartbreaking because it's not true, but they don't know how to make that true. They don't know. They don't have anybody reaching out or reaching down. And more often than not, people don't know the different, like, people will be scared of somebody because they're tall. I'm 6'4". I'm almost 2 meters tall, 193 centimeters. So that's tall enough for people move out of your way or just assume like, oh, he's, wow, like based on haircut and everything else, like I look like I might vote for one candidate or another, or own a lot of guns. It's an unfortunate way to look, but what are you going to do?
I think it's like breaking that initial barrier down, and
Yeah,
that's what
someone has to go first.
Yeah, but then the sort of back end of that is sometimes if you go first and you try and break them barriers down with another male person, they could get sort of scared of handling that sort of situation.
It does happen, and then you withdraw, like having like a bad first date and then never dating again. I've been divorced and I've had a couple traumatic relationships. I definitely see the appeal. If I was this bad at any other thing in my life, I'd never do it again. Like, I wouldn't get behind the wheel of a car if I had the equivalent of accident record as my relationships with the opposite sex. I'd never touch a car again. I don't want it to randomly explode. Take a leg. Like, it's gonna be horrible. But people are their own, everyone's their own person. Not everyone's going to be exactly like everyone else. And some people will surprise you. And people do change. It doesn't happen as often as we'd hope, but it does happen. It's the toughest thing in the world. And it seems like the thing we want to make the most fun of is telling people something about ourselves that we're scared to tell. That's harder than going to war. I can't remember 2 years in Iraq and in war zones, and I was not scared whatsoever. But when you have kids or you're going through a divorce and you're worried about her taking them, it's hard to describe how much that hurts. It's breathtaking. Nothing even comes close. So how do you explain that to somebody who doesn't have kids? You can't. Like you have to go through it. Like, how do you explain what cancer feels like if you've never had it? Like, you can kind of see it, but it doesn't quite register. So that's the whole point of life, is like reaching back down and not expecting everyone to just, oh, because you said so, I'll do that. Some people need a why, and then some people still are going to go, nah, I'm going to do my own thing anyways. And some people who do everything correctly, they end up being like accountants or something. I don't know. I don't know any of those people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think in human nature, we have that sort of nature where we can see, well, like you said, if someone who doesn't have kids or someone that doesn't have cancer, we can see how messed up it is, but we don't really take it into full consideration. We take it maybe about 75% to think, oh, that's bad.
Most of the time, we're not going to do any change until the pain is enough to do anything about it. And we've started losing things to the point where we can't tolerate that anymore. Yeah, pain has to be pretty, like, I learned through extreme amounts of pain. That's sort of the motivating, or been the consistent pattern through life. And then when I got to a point where I was trying to improve myself, like not drinking anymore, eating better, losing weight, getting back into better shape, all self sort of driven, I find myself giving more than I'm taking, whether it's with my kids or just at work or in society in general. And it's a completely different feeling because it's coming from a different place and like different rationale behind it. But I wasn't going to listen to that nonsense when I was 21. There's nothing I couldn't go back in a time machine and convince myself. That's insane. I would have been the worst. So knowing that kind of humbles you a little bit. Or it should.
Thanks, Brian, for coming on.
Cheers, Brian.
My pleasure, guys.
The best podcasts we have are the ones where you kind of forget you're even on a podcast during it, and it's definitely one of them.
I had a guy tell me a very nice compliment, and it's been nice to know what my skill sets are. But he said, I've got a friend who describes people as treadmill friends or couch friends. When you're finished with talking with them, do you want to sit on the couch or do you want to get on a treadmill? And he goes, you're a treadmill person. I feel energized and not drained, excited about, I don't know what, but like my energy level's up. I didn't feel like I was suffering for an hour. Like if someone says, I need you to watch a training video on cybersecurity for the next hour, but you're not allowed to fidget or like do anything else while you're doing it, I really need you to pay attention. Just give me a gun. Just like, I'd rather lose my job. I don't want to do that. Like,
yeah, no.
This was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and it's been informative and it's been funny.